The day my mother's call came through, I was in my Manhattan office reviewing quarterly reports for the foundation. Eleanor. My mother's voice crackled through the speaker, strained in that way I'd learned to recognize. There's been a development in a team at St. Vincent's. They've been working on a new procedure. Your sister convinced them to take your case. I almost laughed. My sister, Eleanor, the one who'd made my life hell in high school, the one who'd called me the elephant in the hallways, the one who'd stood by while our stepmother poured her love into her own flesh and blood while I faded into the background like furniture. Sister? The word came out flat. She knows I exist now. Eleanor, please. She's changed. She's the chief resident now, and I'm not interested in what she's done. I gripped the phone tighter. She's never been interested in what I've done. The silence stretched between U.S. and my mother, Diana Richardson, had never chosen me. Not when it mattered. Not when the money ran out for my treatments. Not when the family dinners became a showcase of Eleanor's achievements while I sat in the corner with my failing heart and my failed body. Look, my mother said, her voice shifting into the patient, placating tone she reserved for difficult children. I'm not asking you to forgive anyone. I'm asking you to live. The doctor heading the team is world class. Adrian Bennett. He's the best in his field, and he personally reached out to offer his expertise. Adrian Bennett. The name hit me like a punch to the chest, and for a moment I forgot to breathe. Eleanor? Eleanor, are you there? Send me the details, I heard myself say, my voice distant, as if speaking from somewhere far away. I'll have my assistant coordinate. I hung up before she could say anything else. Then I sat in my corner office on the 47th floor, watching the afternoon sun glint off the Chrysler Building, and I let myself remember. The first time I noticed Adrian Bennett, I was 15, sitting in third period history with my face pressed against a textbook, trying to disappear. He was the golden boy, varsity lacrosse, debate team president, straight A's without breaking a sweat. The kind of kid who walked into a room and made everyone else feel like they were standing in his shadow. And I was the opposite, the quiet girl in the back, the one who wore oversized sweaters to hide the weight my stepmother never stopped commenting on, the one who ate lunch in the library because the cafeteria felt like a battlefield. But I noticed him. Of course I noticed him. Every girl at St. Augustine's prep noticed him. What I didn't understand was why he kept showing up at our classroom door. My stepsister, Diana Richardson, sat 2 rows ahead of me. She was the family star, beautiful, thin, effortlessly popular. The other students called her the sister Eleanor should have been, though never where I could hear that I heard anyway. Diana's mother, my stepmother, had married my father when I was 8, and from that moment on, I'd been the extra, the mistake, the child who came with a first wife and ruined the perfect picture. My father had been distant before the divorce. Afterward, he was a ghost in his own house, signing checks and disappearing into his study while my stepmother decided my future. The future, according to her, invisible. When Adrian called Diana out of class that first time, I watched from the window. He handed her a bag, something small, black plastic, and she laughed, touching his arm in that easy way she had. The girls around me whispered about their secret relationship, the childhood romance that had supposedly been building since middle school. It never occurred to me that I had a role in that story. Not then. The first day I left the beef jerky in his locker, I thought I was helping. Adrian was too thin. I noticed it months earlier, how his cheeks hollowed out during finals, how his uniform seemed to hang off his shoulders. My stepmother controlled our household food budget with an iron fist, but I learned early to hide things. Non-perishable items I'd buy with the allowance my grandmother sent me, the only person in the family who remembered I existed. So I started leaving small packages in Adrian's locker, notes scribbled in handwriting I'd practiced to match Diana's. You're doing great. Don't forget to eat. Thinking of you. The first time I saw him pull out the jerky, that familiar smile breaking across his face, something in my chest cracked open. I told myself it was for Diana. I was helping him, helping her, helping them build something I'd never have. A family, a connection, a future. The lie tasted bitter, but I swallowed it anyway. The track meet changed everything. I was never supposed to RUN, and my doctor had made that clear since elementary school. The hole in my ventricle wasn't huge, but it was enough to leave me breathless after stairs. Enough to make my stepmother tut and my father avoid my gaze. Enough to remind me I'd been born broken. But the gym teacher didn't know that. And neither did my classmates when I was dragged into the 800-meter as a last-minute replacement. The starting pistol went off, and I started running. And then I was on the ground. The fall itself hurt less than the sound of their laughter. Sharp, cruel, echoing across the field as I struggled to breathe. Diana's voice cut through somewhere in the distance. Someone help her. But nobody moved. Nobody ever moved for the extra. Then there were arms around me, lifting me, carrying me. Adrian Bennett, the golden boy, the one who should have been anywhere else. Put me down, I gasped, my face burning. Please. Shut up. His voice was tight, clipped, nothing like the easy confidence I'd heard him use with Diana. I've got you. His shoulders were thin, but I felt the steel underneath, the stubborn refusal to drop me even when his steps faltered. I smelled soap and sweat, and something I'd later recognize as desperation. He carried me all the way to the nurse's office. Then he sat in the corner while the nurse wrapped my ankle, watching me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. Stay, he said when I tried to leave. Just one word. No explanation. So I stayed. And he stayed too, until Diana burst through the door. Adrian. Oh my God. Is she okay? He stood, and the mask slipped back into place. The easy smile, the teasing touch of her hair. She's fine. Just a sprain. You want to take her to the car? Diana ran to me, her perfume cloying, her touch solicitous. But I couldn't stop watching Adrian as he walked away. Couldn't stop remembering the way he looked at me before she arrived. Like I was something worth seeing. 3 weeks later, my diagnosis came back worse than expected. The call came during fourth period English. My mother's voice, trembling. Eleanor, we need to go to Switzerland. There's a specialist. It's urgent. I didn't tell anyone. Not Diana. Not Adrian. What would I say? That I was broken in a way that couldn't be fixed? That the extra in the family was finally being removed? They thought I was just another privileged kid jetting off for a vacation, and my stepmother spread that rumor herself. Oh, Eleanor's going abroad for the year. Foundation work. You know how she loves playing philanthropist. The truth was uglier. The truth was I was dying, and nobody wanted to admit it. I came back 3 months later, thinner, paler, wearing more makeup to cover the shadows under my eyes. Diana's desk had been cleaned of the gifts I used to leave. I saw some of them on other girls' desks, given away or bartered for something better. The notebook she handed me was full of Adrian's handwriting, and I knew it immediately. The sharp slant of the letters, the way he crossed his T's. Diana lied when I asked her about it. I was in a rush, she said, but I knew. And I still kept it, because it was all I had left of him. The confrontation with the gym teacher's nephew was the first time Adrian ever showed me his teeth. I was sitting under the bleachers, trying to disappear, when the boys' basketball hit me square in the back. Sorry about that, he drawled. Didn't see the landmass. Diana was there in an instant, protective, vocal, every bit the sister who'd never stepped up when it counted. She told him to apologize. He laughed. Then Adrian appeared. I don't remember seeing him cross the field. I just remember the way the air changed when he grabbed the basketball out of the air, the way his voice dropped to a register that made everyone around him freeze. You're going to apologize. It wasn't a request. And then you're going to walk away. If I see you near them again, you'll regret it. The ball hit the boy's chest hard enough to send him sprawling. Adrian didn't even blink. The gym teacher tried to intervene. He was the boy's uncle, a loud man with a red face and a career built on nepotism. Bennett, detention, now. But I'd already learned how the system worked. I learned from years of being invisible in the shadows, always observing, gathering the secrets that would one day be my currency. I went to the principal's office and used my grandmother's foundation name like a weapon. The rain started before Adrian's detention ended. I stood under the awning, watching him in the center of the field, rain plastering his hair to his forehead, his back straight as a rod. He hadn't broken once. Not during the lecture. Not during the threats. I knew what it felt like, that stubborn refusal to bend. I'd been doing it my whole life. When I stepped into the rain with the black umbrella, he looked up. For a moment, he didn't recognize me. Then something shifted in his expression. Surprise, recognition, something warmer. What are you doing here? His voice was hoarse from the cold. Returning the favor. I raised the umbrella to cover both of us. You carried me once. I'm just. It wasn't a favor, he interrupted. It was never a favor. Diana's voice cut through the rain behind us. Adrian, Eleanor, what are you two doing? I turned away before I could see his expression. Let her think it was about her. Let her think it was always about her. That was the lie I'd built, and I was too tired to tear it down. The day I left for Switzerland for good, I didn't say goodbye. I wrote 2 letters, one for Diana, explaining the foundation scholarship I'd arranged to cover her tuition. One for Adrian, saying nothing at all. I'd been doing him favors all along, helping him by being invisible, helping him by keeping the secret of what I felt locked behind the walls of a heart that couldn't sustain it. Some love is meant to be sacrificed. That's what I told myself on the plane as New York fell away beneath me. It wasn't true. It would never be true. But I believed it at the time. And I carried that belief with me through 8 years of surgeries, treatments, failed procedures, and nights so cold I forgot what warmth felt like. Through the moments when my stepmother's voice echoed in my head, telling me I wasn't worth saving. Through the moments when my father's signature disappeared from the family accounts. Through the moment I realized I'd been written out of the inheritance entirely. They kept the houses, the cars, the legal structures that could have paid for a private surgeon. They kept the family name. They kept everything, but the one thing I needed most. I didn't fight it. I let them take it all. I let them believe I was nothing. Because while they'd been playing their family games, I'd been building something else, something they couldn't touch. The foundation had grown while I was fighting for my life. The board of directors, my grandmother's old allies, the legal team I'd quietly assembled, they were my legacy now. And I was ready to use them. The call that brought me back to New York came on a Monday morning, Dr. Diana Richardson, chief resident of cardiac surgery at St. Vincent's. My sister's voice on the phone was professional, clipped, all business. Eleanor, I'm sending you the details of a new procedure. My team believes you're a candidate. The lead surgeon is one of the best in the world. She listed his credentials. She didn't mention his name. I already knew who it was. Your family will cover the costs, of course, she added, as if she were doing me a favor. Let me be clear, I said softly. I don't need your money, and I don't need your permission. If this procedure happens, it happens on my terms. The foundation will pay. And you will not speak to my team about my case without my approval. The silence stretched between us. I imagined her face, the shock, the barely hidden disappointment. I understand, she said finally. The The surgeon will brief you directly. Of course he would, because I'd been reading his research for years. Because I tracked every paper he published, every breakthrough he made, every word that hinted at the boy I'd once carried a torch for, because I hadn't forgotten, no matter how hard I tried. I told myself I was ready to see him again. I was wrong. The morning I landed at St. Vincent's, the smell of antiseptic hit me. Before anything else, I'd been in enough hospitals to know what came next, the tests, the consultations. The careful, measured conversations where everyone pretended there was still hope. Diana met me in the lobby. She looked older, thinner, the sharp angles of her face softened by the same exhaustion that had haunted her during our school years. She hugged me like she meant it. Like we'd never been enemies at all. I let her. Then I pulled away. "Where's the surgeon?" I asked. "He's in a consultation with another patient." She avoided my eyes. "He'll meet with you this afternoon." "Good. Send him to my room." I turned and walked toward the elevator without a backward glance. I could feel the weight of her stare on my back, could feel every unspoken question she was too afraid to ask. The foundation. The money. The life I'd built while they'd all been certain I'd die. Let them wonder. Let them worry. That was the part they didn't understand about invisibility. When you learn to blend into the background, you also learn to watch. You see the cracks in their facades, the secrets they keep. You become a repository for information nobody realizes you have. By the time Adrian Bennett walked into my hospital room, I'd memorized every detail of his life since I'd left. The research papers, the awards. The article in the Times that called him the savior of modern cardiac surgery. The small, quiet biography that mentioned his sister, Diana, and their mother's death from heart failure. The reason he'd chosen his specialty in the first place. The reason he'd never stopped searching for a cure. Eleanor Hayes. His voice was exactly as I remembered. Low, measured, carrying a weight that made everyone around him lean in. It's been a long time. He looked different, older, harder. The boy I'd known had been all sharp angles and nervous energy, hiding behind a mask of easy confidence. The man in front of me had shed the mask entirely. He was built like someone who'd learned to endure. Broad shoulders, steady hands, eyes that held no humor at all. "You look good, Adrian." I kept my voice even, conversational. 8 years of research agrees with you. "Thank you." He sat in the chair beside my bed, crossing one ankle over his knee. The gesture was so familiar it made my chest ache. "You look different." "Less weight." I shrugged. "The treatments take it off. One of the few silver linings if you're into that sort of thing." His jaw tightened. "I never cared about your weight." Could have fooled me. The words came out bitter, and I regretted them immediately. This wasn't the conversation I'd planned. This wasn't the reunion I'd prepared for. "Eleanor." He leaned forward, and something in his expression shifted, softened. "There are things we should discuss. About your condition. About the procedure. About why you've been following my case for 8 years?" I met his eyes, let him see that I knew. "About why you reached out to Diana when nobody else would?" The silence stretched between us. "I never stopped looking for you." His voice was barely a whisper. "After you left." "After I left, you went to Harvard, then Stanford, then the research facility in Switzerland that happens to be blocks from the hospital where I was being treated." I watched his face carefully. "You're a lot of things, Adrian, but you're not a coincidence." He laughed. It was a broken sound, ragged at the edges. "You always did see too much, didn't you?" "Some of us learn." I turned to face the window. The sky outside was gray, heavy with clouds that threatened rain. I spent 8 years learning the hard way about the world, about people, about the family that stopped being my family the moment I got sick. "Your father." "My father wrote me out of the will, and my stepmother called my doctors and told them I was a hypochondriac." Diana sat back and watched. I heard my own voice, flat and clinical, like I was discussing someone else's life. They decided I wasn't worth saving. S.O. I saved myself. I finally turned to face him, let him see the full weight of what I was saying. "The foundation that's paying for this procedure. My grandmother started it before she died, and I took it over in college, and I grew it by 1,500% in the last decade. The houses they kept? The money they stole? I could buy them all back tomorrow and still have enough left over to burn." I smiled. "I don't need them, and I don't need anyone." "Eleanor, I'm not telling you this for sympathy." I held his gaze. "I'm telling you because I need you to understand. If you're here because you feel guilty about something that happened in high school, you can leave. If you're here because my sister called you in for favor, you can leave. But if you're here because you actually believe you can save my life." I let the silence stretch, let him fill the space. "Then you're welcome to stay." He didn't answer immediately, just watched me with those dark eyes I'd spent 8 years trying to forget. Then so quietly, I almost missed it. "Eleanor, I'm here because I promised myself I'd bring you home." I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out. What could I say to that? The boy I'd loved had grown into a man who'd crossed an ocean for me. The sister who'd betrayed me had called him in to help. And the family I'd spent my life running from was finally about to learn the truth. 2 days later, my stepmother showed up at the hospital. I'd barely managed the morning round of tests when she stormed through the door, all fur coat and diamond rings and the same sharp smile she'd given me since I was 8 years old. "Eleanor." She didn't bother with pleasantries. "I heard you were back." "Maureen." I kept my voice flat. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" My stepmother, Maureen, had always been transparent in her intentions. She didn't want me here. She never had. My existence interfered with the perfect family she'd built with my father. The private school, the social connections, the inheritance that should have been Diana's alone. Now that I was back, she was clearly worried. Worried I'd disrupt the careful structure she'd constructed while I was gone. Worried I'd demand what was rightfully mine. "I need to talk to you about the estate," she said, dropping into the chair beside my bed. "Your father's will is written in clear language." I smiled sweetly. "I've reviewed it. You can't actually take." "I can." I folded my hands in my lap. "But I'm not going to. I don't want their money. I don't want their properties. I don't want anything they thought they could lock me out of." "Then why are you here?" Her voice was sharp. "Why come back now?" "Because I want to live." I held her gaze, and whether you like it or not, you're going to help me. I saw the calculation flicker across her face. The fear. She'd never been able to control me. Not really, and my sudden reappearance was unraveling everything she'd built. I wanted to enjoy the moment, wanted to savor the satisfaction of watching her realize how badly she'd miscalculated, but something else was stirring beneath the anger. Something I'd spent years suppressing. Curiosity. Because while I'd been reading Adrian's research papers, I'd also been reading something else, a file that had been sitting in my grandmother's safety deposit box. A file that told a very different story about my family's past. A file that suggested everything I'd been told was a lie. "Maureen," I said softly, "who really paid for Adrian's medical school?" She went pale. "What are you talking about?" "Adrian Bennett, your daughter's so-called brother." I watched her face carefully. He worked his way through undergrad, but something changed when he applied to medical school. Full scholarship. Paid for by a private foundation. "Your grandmother's foundation," I said, letting the words land like stones, "doesn't give scholarships to medical students, but another one does. One with a name that's been redacted from every public record." I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. "I found this in Grandma's old papers. I think you know what it means." Maureen stared at the folder like it was a snake about to strike. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then, so softly, I barely heard it. "Eleanor, please, don't do this. Not here. Not now." "Not do what?" I asked. "Not reveal the truth?" I opened the folder. Inside were documents I'd studied late into the night, trying to understand. A birth certificate, a medical record, a will that had been sealed for 3 decades. Maureen's hand shot out, desperate to snatch it away. I pulled back just in time. "Who is Adrian Bennett, Maureen?" I demanded. "What did you do?" For the first time, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. My stepmother was a lot of things, calculating, cruel, ruthlessly ambitious, but she'd never shown me real emotion before. This was real. "It was an arrangement," she said finally. "A very old arrangement. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I never." "Tell me." My voice came out harder than I meant it to. "Or I'll take this to the board of directors. I'll make sure everyone knows what you did." The silence that followed was long and brittle. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall, the distant beep of monitors from down the hall, my own heart racing in my chest. Then Maureen spoke. "Adrian Bennett," she said slowly, "is your brother." I couldn't breathe. "It was a mistake," she said. "A mistake I've been trying to fix for decades. But when you left, when you got sick, I thought it was finally over. I thought we could all move on." "You thought." My voice cracked. "You thought I'd just disappear? That everything you did would just go away?" "I thought," Maureen stopped. "I thought I was protecting my family, protecting Diana, protecting the life I'd built." "Your family," I repeated. "The life you built." The words tasted like ash in my mouth. I'd spent 8 years convincing myself I was the extra, the mistake, the child who didn't belong. I built a foundation on that rejection, used it to create something new, something no one could take away. And now I was learning it had all been based on a lie. Adrian Bennett wasn't just the boy I'd loved. He was the brother I'd never known, the connection I'd been denied. I wondered, suddenly, why my grandmother hadn't told me, why she'd waited until she was gone to leave the truth in a safety deposit box, waiting to be found. "She was protecting you," Maureen whispered, as if reading my thoughts. "Your grandmother, she knew what they were planning, the hospital records, the sealed documents, everything. She knew they'd never let you inherit. She knew they'd try to erase you. And she left the truth behind so I could figure it out myself. I was no longer angry. I was tired, bone deep exhausted, from years of fighting battles I didn't even understand. Why? Because you were the only one brave enough to face it." Maureen's voice softened. "Eleanor, there's something else. Something I haven't told anyone. About your mother." I froze. "My mother died when I was 4. "She did. But before she died," Maureen swallowed. "She made arrangements, legal documents she wanted you to have at a trust fund that's been growing for 35 years, waiting for you to turn 40. 40. I almost laughed. I'm 38. What happens in 2 years? Nothing." Maureen's voice was barely audible. "It's already active. She wanted you to have it when you were ready, when you were strong enough to fight for what's yours." The room seemed to spin around me. I gripped the arms of the chair, forcing myself to breathe. I'd spent my whole life feeling worthless, broken, like the heart beating in my chest was a curse. But somewhere, hidden in the shadows of the family I thought had abandoned me, someone had been fighting for me all along. My birth mother, the woman I barely remembered, the woman who'd hidden her love in a will and a trust fund and a folder full of secrets that had just exploded across my hospital bed. Diana knows, Maureen said suddenly. She found out last year. She's been trying to make amends. That's why she pushed for you to come back. That's why she brought Adrian in. She's been trying to fix what she broke. And Adrian? I asked. Does he know? No. Maureen shook her head. I don't think he ever suspected. But I think he's known something was missing. Something he couldn't name. I thought about Adrian's face when he looked at me in the hospital room. The intensity I'd mistaken for professional interest. The way he'd said, I promised myself I'd bring you home. He hadn't known we were siblings, but he'd felt something. Something that pulled him across oceans through years of research, straight back to me. If I tell him, I said slowly, what happens? I don't know. Maureen's voice was small, but I think maybe you both deserve to know. The door to my hospital room opened and Adrian walked in. He'd changed out of his surgical scrubs into jeans and a worn sweater that made him look younger, softer, more like the boy I remembered. He was holding a cup of coffee and a small paper bag that smelled faintly of beef jerky. I thought you might be hungry, he said awkwardly, setting the bag on the table beside my bed. They don't feed you well in these places. Adrian, I said, and my voice broke on his name. He stopped. His eyes found mine, and I saw the question there. The concern. The same emotion I'd seen on his face 8 years ago, standing in the rain with an umbrella over both our heads. Eleanor. He stepped closer. What's wrong? I looked at the folder on the table, at Maureen standing frozen in the corner, at the truth that had been waiting to be told, waiting to explode the life I'd carefully rebuilt. I couldn't tell him. Not yet. Not like this. But I could show him. I lifted the folder and handed it to him. He took it, opened it, and I watched his face as he began to read. The confusion, the dawning horror, the slow, painful realization that everything he'd thought about his life was a lie. Eleanor, he looked up and his eyes were bright with unshed tears. Is this true? It's true. I held his gaze. We're siblings, Adrian. I'm so sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I only found out myself just now. His hand shot out and gripped mine. Hard. Desperate. I came back for you, he said hoarsely. I've spent 8 years trying to come back for you, Jinever. I didn't know we were connected, but I felt something that wouldn't let me stop looking. We're connected now, I whispered. We're connected now, and I'm not going anywhere. He pulled me into a hug, his arms wrapped tight around my shaking shoulders. I heard a muffled sob from somewhere beside us. Maureen, maybe, or perhaps it was my own heart, breaking open at long last. For years, I'd felt like I had to fight everything on my own. The illness, the rejection, the family that didn't want me. I'd learned to build walls, a legal team, a private foundation, a circle of contacts who only knew me as the billionaire philanthropist who never let anyone close. Now I was learning to let them down. Adrian pulled away, his eyes red but steady. We're going to get through this, he said firmly. The surgery, the recovery, everything. I'm not letting you go again. You understand me? I opened my mouth to answer, but before I could form a single word, the monitor beside my bed flatlined. The alarms went off, shrill and urgent. Adrian's face vanished above me. I only had a moment to see him move toward the wall, toward the crash cart, toward the team of nurses piling through the door. Stay with me. I thought I heard him say, please, Eleanor, stay. I wanted to say something back. I wanted to tell him that I'd always been fighting. For myself, for him, for the future we might finally have. But my heart had other plans. And in the sudden silence, I thought I heard my grandmother's voice, distant as a whisper, telling me the same thing she'd always told me when I was small. You're a fighter, Eleanor. It's in your blood. I held on. For him, for her, for me. And the light stayed on. I woke to fluorescent light and the sound of someone crying. For a moment, I couldn't place where I was. The ceiling was wrong. Too white, too sterile, lined with tracks for equipment I didn't recognize. The bed beneath me was too hard, the sheets too rough, and there was a beeping somewhere to my left that I couldn't seem to stop. Then memory crashed back. Adrian's face, the folder, the truth I'd uncovered in the space of a single afternoon. I tried to speak, but my throat was dry. There was a tube in my throat. I reached up, and a hand caught mine before I could touch it. Don't. Let me. Adrian's voice, hoarse, raw, like he'd been screaming. He appeared above me, his face pale and streaked with something that might have been tears. He looked older than I remembered, more tired, more afraid. What? The word came out as a croak. He moved quickly, adjusting the tube, pressing something that made the world swim back into focus. Don't talk yet. His hands were steady even as his voice shook. You've been out for 48 hours. We had to put you under. The arrhythmia was too severe. We managed it, but you need to rest. 48 hours. I tried to calculate what that meant. How much had happened while I was gone? What had Adrian found in those files? What had he done while I was unconscious? I moved my hand and he caught it again. His grip was warm, solid. The only anchor in a world that had suddenly become unmoored. Eleanor, he stopped, swallowed. Then, so quietly I almost missed it, I found out everything. The files, the trust, what Maureen did, what they all did. They. I managed the word, watching his face. Diana told me, he said her name without inflection, without the warmth I'd always heard when he spoke of her. She found the same documents 3 years ago. She's been trying to figure out how to tell me ever since. She thought she was protecting me. I understood that lie. I'd been telling it to myself for 20 years. Where is she? I asked. Outside. He jerked his head toward the door. She hasn't left since you went down. She's been camped out in the waiting room, refusing to move. I told her to give you space, but she won't listen. Diana? Waiting. Diana, the sister who'd stood by while I was erased, who'd let her stepmother rewrite history and call it love. Diana, who turned out to be carrying secrets of her own. I didn't know if I was ready to see her. Didn't know if I'd ever be ready. She's been the one pushing for you, Adrian said, as if reading my thoughts. The procedure, the specialists, everything. She found out about the trust 3 years ago, and she's been fighting for you ever since, even when your father tried to block it. My father. The words tasted bitter. What did he do? Adrian's jaw tightened. He tried to have the trust dissolved, claimed your mother was insane when she wrote it, said she wasn't of sound mind. But there were medical records. Her doctors testified in court. She was competent. She knew exactly what she was doing. The judge threw the case out. A trust written by a mother I barely remembered, fought for by a sister I'd thought didn't care. The irony was almost too sharp to bear. Adrian, I said, I need you to tell me something. All those years ago, when I left, did you know? Did you suspect the truth about who I was? He released my hand and stepped back, running his own hands through his hair. I watched the gesture, the familiar tension in his shoulders, the way he couldn't quite meet my eyes. I didn't know, he said finally, but I always felt something that didn't make sense. When I looked at you in high school, he stopped. I saw a reflection like looking in a mirror. I thought it was just attraction, infatuation, that I told myself it was normal. And now I know it was something else. He finally looked at me, and there was so much pain in his expression that it physically hurt to see. I don't know how to feel, Eleanor. I've been in love with you for 15 years, or I thought I was. Now I'm finding out that the person I loved was my sister all along. The weight of those words settled between us. I'd spent 8 years convincing myself that what I felt for Adrian was a crush, a juvenile infatuation that would fade with time and distance. I told myself that he belonged with Diana, that they were the real couple, that I was just the extra in their story. Now, everything I thought I knew had been turned inside out. Maybe we weren't in love, I said slowly. Maybe we were just two pieces of the same puzzle. We didn't know it, but we were drawn together anyway. It doesn't have to be romantic to be real. Adrian stared at me. Are you trying to make me feel better? I'm trying to figure out how to survive this without losing my mind. I attempted to smile, though I wasn't sure how convincing it was. We've both been lied to by everyone we trusted. The least we can do is not lie to each other. Something shifted in his expression. The grief was still there, but there was something else underneath it. Something that looked almost like relief. Maureen told me everything, he said. The adoption, the agreement, the way my birth mother signed away her rights, so I could have a better life. She thought she was protecting me too. Everyone's been protecting us, I whispered. And in the process, they destroyed everything we could have had. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. We both understood the weight of that truth. The door opened, and Diana walked in. She looked terrible. Her hair was tangled, her face pale, her eyes red-rimmed and swollen. She was still in her scrubs, and there was a coffee stain on her sleeve that looked like it had been there for hours. Eleanor. Her voice cracked. Thank God. Thank God you're awake. I didn't know what to say to her. And the years I'd been gone, I'd imagined this moment 100 times. When I finally faced the sister who'd betrayed me. I'd pictured coldness, distance, the satisfaction of cutting her out of my life the way she'd cut me out of hers. Now that she was standing in front of me, I couldn't summon the anger. They told me about the trust, I said instead, about the court case, about everything you did to protect it. Diana's face crumpled. I didn't do it to protect the trust. I did it to protect you. I knew how hard you'd been fighting, how much they'd tried to break you. I thought if I could keep that one piece of your mother's legacy intact, maybe it would be enough. Enough for what? Enough for you to come back. Her voice was barely a whisper. Enough for you to see that someone in this family still cared. The weight of that sentence hung between us. For years, I believed no one cared. I built my life on that belief, created a fortress of money and power to keep everyone at a distance. And now I was learning that the fortress had been built on a foundation of lies. Diana, I said slowly, how long have you known? She hesitated. 3 years. I found the documents in a safety deposit box at Grandma's bank. I went looking for something else, and I found those instead. 3 years. All that time, she'd been carrying the secret, waiting for the right moment to tell me. All that time, I'd been too stubborn to answer her calls. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. Why wait until now? Because I was afraid. Her eyes glistened. I was so afraid that if I told you, you'd run away again. I thought if I could just get you here, if I could just show you the truth in person, you'd see that I wasn't the enemy. The enemy. That's what I'd always thought of her. The golden sister, the one who got everything, the one who stood by while our stepmother destroyed what was left of my childhood. But Diana had been a child too. She'd been caught in the same web of lies, manipulated the same way I'd been manipulated. The only difference was that she'd stayed, and I'd run. I'm not running anymore, I said. I'm too tired to run. The laugh that escaped her was half-sob. That's what I was afraid of, she admitted. I thought if I could just get you back, get you home, you'd remember what it felt like to have people who loved you. People who loved me? I heard the bitterness in my own voice. Diana, your mother tried to erase me. Your father wrote me out of the will. And you sat there and watched it happen. The words came out harsher than I meant them to, and I watched her flinch like I'd hit her. I know, she said. I know I didn't fight hard enough. I know I should have done more. But I was young and I was scared and I didn't know how to stand up to them. Not then. And now I'm trying. Her voice broke. Now I'm here and I'm not going anywhere and I'll fight your battles for you, if that's what it takes. I'll fight anyone, even him. The way she said it sent a chill down my spine. Him. Diana glanced at Adrian, who'd gone very still. Your father, she said, her voice barely audible. He's here. He's been waiting in the lobby for 2 days. He wants to see you. My father. The man who'd signed away my inheritance. The man who'd stood by while his wife destroyed my childhood. The man who'd let me suffer in silence because it was easier than standing up. I had spent 8 years pretending he didn't exist. 8 years building a life that didn't include him. And now he was waiting outside, expecting me to let him in. Tell him to leave, I said flatly. Eleanor. Tell him I'm not ready. Tell him I don't want to see him. Tell him anything you want, but I'm not going to sit here and let him pretend he's sorry now that it's too late. Diana opened her mouth to argue, then seemed to think better of it. She nodded once, turned, and walked out of the room. The door swung shut behind her, and I was alone with Adrian. Are you okay? He asked quietly. No, I admitted. I'm not, but I'm still here. An hour later, someone knocked on the door. It wasn't Diana. It wasn't Adrian. When the door swung open, I found myself staring at a woman I hadn't seen in 20 years. My grandmother's lawyer. The woman who'd handled her estate, who'd managed the foundation while I was still a child, who'd kept the secrets that had finally come to light. Eleanor. She smiled, and it softened the sharp edges of her face. It's good to see you awake. Margaret. I tried to sit up, but the movement sent a spike of pain through my chest. What are you doing here? Your grandmother asked me to come. She walked to the chair beside my bed and sat down, crossing her ankles with the casual grace of someone who'd been in this position many times before. She left instructions, in case of emergency. Of course she did. My grandmother had always been a planner. She'd known even then that the family I'd been born into might turn on me, and she built safeguards into the system to protect me. What kind of instructions? I asked. Legal instructions. Margaret reached into her bag and pulled out a thick manila folder. Documents that transfer control of the foundation to you, immediately, with no restrictions. I stared at the folder. I already have control of the foundation. You have operational control, she corrected gently. But the board has been controlled by your stepmother for the past decade. She's been using it to fund projects that benefit her social circles, her connections. She's been draining the assets, slowly but steadily. The foundation, my grandmother's legacy, the only thing I'd ever truly believed was mine. She can't do that, I said. The trust. The trust is separate, Margaret explained. The foundation is a different entity. IT was set up by your grandmother before she died, and she appointed your stepmother as one of the trustees. But she also included a clause that, once activated, gives the foundation over to you completely, irrevocably. How do I activate it? Margaret's smile was razor sharp. You need to prove that you're still alive. The weight of that statement hit me like a physical blow. MY's stepmother had been draining the foundation because she assumed I'd never come back. She'd assumed I'd die one way or another, and all of my grandmother's money would eventually pass to her. But I hadn't died. I was here in this hospital bed, fighting for my life. And I was ready to fight for my legacy too. So you see, Miss Hayes, Margaret said later, when she was finishing her explanation, the documents I'm leaving with you include everything you'll need to take control of the foundation. Financial records, board member lists, a complete audit of the last 8 years of disbursements. I looked at the folder in my hands, thick and heavy with the evidence of my stepmother's theft. She's been embezzling. Legally, it's difficult to prove she's been careful, but the records show a clear pattern of disbursements to organizations with which she has direct business ties. If we were to present this to a court, then we presented. Adrian, who'd been standing in the corner, stepped forward. Eleanor, are you sure? This will start a war with your family. My family, I said, has been at war with me my entire life. I'm just deciding to fight back. He studied my face for a long moment, searching for something I couldn't name. Then he nodded. Good, he said, because I've got something else to tell you. Margaret excused herself, and Adrian sat down on the edge of the bed, his expression carefully neutral. While you were unconscious, I did some research, he began, about your mother's trust, about the accounts that IT turns out your father tried to access them a decade ago. He was denied. He tried again 5 years later, denied again. My mother knew, I said slowly. She knew he'd try to steal from me. She knew exactly what he'd do. That's why the trust was set up the way it was. She wanted to make sure he could never touch it, even after she died, even after you were gone. For a moment, I couldn't speak, that I'd spent my entire life believing I had no one on my side. But somewhere in the past, I barely remembered. A mother I'd only known through photographs had been building a wall around me, keeping the wolves at bay even as they circled closer. Adrian, I said, finally, I need to know something. The doctors, the ones who told me I'd die if I didn't get the surgery, were they part of the plan? Did my stepmother pay them to lie? He went very still. Why would you ask that? Because I've been thinking, I said carefully. I've been thinking about all the times the diagnosis got worse right after someone in the family made a business deal. Right after the foundation paid out a large sum, and I've been thinking about how convenient it was that I was always too sick to get involved, too ill to fight. The realization settled into me like a stone. I'd been told for 20 years that my heart was failing point, 20 years of treatments, surgeries, sleepless nights. 20 years of believing I was going to die. But what if I wasn't? What if the diagnosis was wrong? I asked Adrian. What if they've been lying to me my entire life? The room went quiet. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. I can't answer that, Adrian said finally. I can't. We can't know without more information. But if you're asking me whether I think your stepmother is capable of that, then yes. Ida. I released the breath I'd been holding. Then we need to find the truth. Adrian reached out and squeezed my hand. Then we'll find it, together. I felt my eyes sting again, but I blinked the tears away. I was done crying. I decided I was done feeling sorry for myself. The family that had broken me had also built me stronger, harder, more determined than they'd ever suspected. The documents I needed were already in my hands. The legal team was already on standby, and I had something they'd never counted on. I had someone by my side who'd been fighting for me all along. The next morning, I had a visitor. My father, Arthur Hayes, walked into my hospital room without knocking, his shoulders hunched, his face lined with the weight of years I didn't understand. Eleanor, he said, and his voice cracked. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I stared at him. The man who'd let my stepmother destroy my childhood, who'd signed away my inheritance, who'd never once visited me in Switzerland even when the doctors told him I might not survive. What are you doing here? I asked. I came to tell you the truth. He sank into the chair beside my bed, his eyes bloodshot and his hands shaking. I should have told you years ago that I should have been a better father. I should have protected you. You should have done a lot of things, I said coldly. But you didn't. You let her destroy me. You watched her steal everything I had. I know. His voice was barely a whisper. I know I failed you, and I know I'll never be able to make it right. I wanted to scream at him, to tell him how much he'd hurt me, how many sleepless nights I'd spent wondering if I'd ever be loved. But the anger I'd been carrying for so long was fading, replaced by something that felt almost like sorrow. I don't want your apology, I said finally. I want you to tell me the truth. About my mother, about the trust, about everything. He looked up at me, and I saw something I'd never seen in his face before. True regret. Your mother, he began slowly, died of a broken heart. Not literally. She had an aneurysm, but the stress of the divorce, the stress of the family, she never recovered. And before she died, she made me promise to take care of you. The TO makes sure you'd always be safe. And you didn't keep that promise. No. His voice broke. I didn't, and I have to live with that for the rest of my life. That I was weak. Did I let Maureen push me into decisions I knew were wrong. I let her isolate you, hurt you, destroy you. That I was a coward. I should have felt satisfaction. Years of anger finally coming to a head. But all I felt was exhaustion. She's been stealing from the foundation, hasn't she? I asked. My father's face paled. How did you know? I have my sources. I leaned back on my pillows, watching the recognition dawn in his eyes. I also know about the trust, about the court cases, about everything you tried to hide from me. Eleanor. It's too late for apologies, Dad. I held his gaze. But it's not too late to do the right thing. And I'm not going to fight you. I'm not going to destroy the family you've built. But I'm not going to let her take anything else from me. The foundation is mine. The legacy is mine. And if you try to stop me, I'll take you to court. He stared at me for a long moment. Then, slowly, a small smile crept across his face. You're exactly like your mother, he said softly. She was the most stubborn woman I ever knew. She never backed down from a fight. I didn't know what to say to that. I barely remembered my mother. Just a few flickering images, a warm voice, the scent of lavender. I'm not backing down, I said. Not now. Not ever. 3 days later, I was released from the hospital. Not healed, not fixed, but stable enough to leave the building. The surgery was still scheduled for the end of the month, but the doctors wanted me to rest at home first. Adrian drove me to the apartment I'd rented, a small, secure place in the same neighborhood where my grandmother used to live. The building was old, well-maintained, with a kind of quiet dignity that reminded me of the past I'd lost. Are you sure you want to stay here? He asked as we pulled up to the curb. There are other places. This is fine, I said firmly. It's where I'm meant to be. He helped me up the stairs, his arms steady around my waist. I was still weak, still dizzy, still processing the enormity of everything I'd learned in the past week. But I was alive, and I was ready to fight. The day before the surgery, I called a meeting at the foundation's offices. Margaret was there with the legal documents. Diana was there, her face pale but determined. Adrian stood beside me, a silent presence that gave me strength. And my stepmother was there, standing in the back of the room, her expression caught between fury and fear. I'm taking control of the foundation, I announced. The board has been informed. The documents are already filed. Anyone who objects can take it up with me directly. My stepmother opened her mouth to argue, but I cut her off. The embezzlement stops today. The theft ends now. If you want to fight me, you'll have to do it in court, and I've already won. I watched the color drain from her face. For the first time in my life, I felt something I'd never felt before. Power. Real, undeniable power. The family that had tried to destroy me was finally learning the truth. And I was just getting started.